I feel like I need to start this video off with a disclaimer, kind of like what Daniel J Layton did in his La La Land film review. So cue the SparkNotes version of that. Please wait. Before you hit the dislike button so quickly, I do like this movie. I actually like this movie. Hear me out. I just have a couple of ideas about it. If you agree, let me know. If you disagree, tell me why. I very well may change my opinion on this in 2 days, so let me know what you think. This is just a theory I have right now. Is La La Land problematic? Before I get into the details of exactly why I think it may or may not be problematic when it comes to race, I saw the film twice. Loved it the second time. First time I watched it, I thought it was good. I thought the cinematography and the visuals were incredible, but nothing was really too memorable. I didn't remember any of the songs, kind of like what Daniel J Layton said in his video. The only thing I did remember was Mia and Sebastian's theme song or whatever, their little melody. But aside from that, I thought the colors were pretty. I thought the entire visual production was stunning, but I wasn't singing it out of the theater. It wasn't anything incredible or crazy or groundbreaking to me. Second time I saw it, I absolutely loved it, and I don't know why I didn't see that the first time. I guess I paid more attention to what they were talking about the second time I watched it. I really liked that this was a whole movie based on passion and people following their passions. I just thought it was beautiful. I thought the songs were beautiful. I thought everything was very well done. Also, side note, lots of spoilers in here obviously because I'm talking about the film, so if you don't want any of that, don't watch the rest of it. Go watch La La Land, come back, think, do you, but just side note, small side note. I thought the movie was very well done the second time I saw it, and I still think that. I think it was very well done, very well produced, as you can see by the amount of people who are in love with it online. But I did have a couple thoughts that I saw no one really talking about, and I got into the comment section of Daniel J Layton's video. I'll link that below because I keep mentioning it. But I found a couple other people in his comment section who share a similar perspective in the sense that nobody was really talking about racial relations when it comes to the film, and I know that's not the main focus of it. It's very passion driven and all about, a lot of people think it's about LA and music and love and all that stuff, which it is, but I mean there are multiple layers to a film, and I think this is one thing that not many people have touched on, so I thought I would. So I guess here's a small theory I had when it comes to whether or not this film acknowledged jazz deriving from black culture. When it comes down to it, I think the film did kind of acknowledge it when it comes to the people they chose to place in certain clubs. Every jazz club that Mia and Sebastian went to was very predominantly black because that's the people who play the music, that's where the culture comes from. So I get that. I don't think that there's a lack of physical representation of people of color, and I think that casting Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone as the leads was fine. I mean, if it was someone else, I remember I saw a Bertie Gilbert tweet that I'll put down here at this very moment, where he was imagine this film but Donald Glover instead of Ryan Gosling, and I think that would be really cool too. But I don't really have a huge problem with them both being the leads. The only thing I do have a problem with slightly is that Seb got it in his head that he was the savior for jazz music, which I'll get into the counterpoint for that later, but one side of the argument I guess would be, why does Seb think he's the only person to save jazz? And then to add on to that, why is the only person of color with an actual predominant speaking role someone who is selling out jazz, someone who's trying to forget who they are and conform to whatever the audience wants? That kind of, I guess, initially rubbed me the wrong way. So I thought, oh, this film is slightly off-putting. Why do that? I didn't understand why. And I mean, I guess I still don't to a certain extent, but I do also see a different side when it comes to that, because at the same time, this film deals with LA, and I think this whole film is kind of throwing little subtle jabs at LA, and I think there was a line in the film, I don't remember it off the top of my head because I saw it 2 weeks ago, a week or two ago, but it was something along the lines of everything is real but also artificial. I forgot, it was Seb was talking to me as they were walking down the Warner Brothers lot, I think that's what it was, and it was just throwing jabs at how LA is filled with things that are very beautiful but very artificial. That's a theme I took from the film without even considering race in it at all. So I was thinking maybe that the director kind of intentionally made it so that Seb had this almost juvenile idea that he could save jazz, that he was the person to do it, and that nobody else had similar interests, which would make sense as to why the director wouldn't put any perspectives of people of color when it comes to saving jazz as well. It seems like Sebastian's the only person who's willing to do it, and that everyone else is kind of just content with where they are or selling out like John Legend's character was. Going back to the argument that this movie is problematic. Something that I thought would maybe fix this is if the director chose to like have one of the jazz musicians at the club, I think it was the Lighthouse or something, come down to the table while Sebastian's explaining things to Mia and like give in his 2 cents about like what he thinks of jazz as a whole and like its place in the current society. But he chose not to do that, and I'm now stuck with wondering whether or not that was intentional to like play onto the whole LA is fake. People do things and they think they're important for doing things, but in reality like things are deeper than they seem, if that makes sense. Sebastian thinks he's the only person who can save jazz, when in reality there's this huge jazz community that already exists. He goes to this club that's doing very well, where musicians seem fine and content. He goes to play piano while like Mia's dancing, I think during their summertime montage, and people are having a good time. Nobody's really worried, or they don't seem to be worried about jazz like one day disappearing, but Sebastian very much is. Maybe that plays into his passion. Maybe that's the director taking another jab at LA and people thinking they're important, or maybe that's just them not considering the fact that maybe a perspective from a person of color who isn't selling out would be a good idea. Something else I kind of wanted to add was that while I was in the comments of Dan's video, I was replying to an initial comment, and there were replies below where people were kind of putting up the argument of, hey, you should be fine, they're hiring the most talented actors, who cares if they're white, blah blah blah. And I don't think they really understood what I was trying to say, or maybe what the other people in the thread were trying to say. I didn't like focus too in-depthly on what other people were commenting back and forth after a while, but my point essentially is that I think it's fine. I think that the fact that these two people are very much passionate and appreciating jazz is completely fine. I mean, I like the fact that they're comfortable in an environment where they're the minority for once, and I don't think there's any problem with them appreciating jazz and loving jazz. My only issue with it was that there was no real perspective from a person of color who wasn't trying to sell out. Does that make sense? Like, the only perspective we got was from John Legend, and he was doing the thing that Sebastian hated, essentially, but he did it anyway for like his own reasons. You know what the plot is if you've watched the movie. I just wish that maybe one of the people playing on stage came down and talked to Sebastian and Mia about why he also felt the same way, or why he was worried about jazz's future. Why he didn't like that the club or whatever that Sebastian previously worked at was changing up their theme. I guess to sum this all up, this film came across as a very Sebastian against the world thing when it came to saving jazz. But as we saw, there were plenty of people already appreciating jazz. We just didn't really get to focus on any of them, and the only person's perspective that we got was from the one person selling out, which is not inherently bad at all. It's just that immediately after watching it the second time, I wondered why they didn't get the perspectives of one of the other musicians who seemed to very much enjoy playing jazz all the time, rather than just Seb, who almost made it a me against the world thing. But let me know what you think. I mean, I could be completely wrong, and I could think all of these theories are 100% irrelevant in like 2 days' time, but that's what I'm thinking now. Do you think that this film was in fact problematic for not including different perspectives and not very like blatantly acknowledging the fact that jazz came from black culture, like verbally saying that? Or do you think that it was a subtle jab at LA and like LA culture? Or do you think that this is all BS? Do you think that it was a perfectly fine movie and that I'm just making things up? Like, I don't know. Let me know what you think. I actually am like fairly curious, because the only videos I've seen so far, aside from Dan's, were 2 other people's, Dodie and Orion, and they both were gushing over the film, and I 100% understand. Like, I love the music and the feelings it gives you, but after like analyzing it, these are other thoughts that I had that nobody was really bringing up, especially nobody of color. Like, Orion was the only person of color I think I've seen talk about this, and again, it was just her gushing about it. So I don't know, I just wanted to bring something new to the table. I hope some of this made sense. Again, if you disagree, let me know why, because I'm curious. I like talking about films. I like talking about this film in particular because a lot of people seem to either really, really love it, not care about it, and there's the very small community of people that I found who think it's very problematic, so I wanted to bring this up. This is me bringing this up. I think I've said that enough. But yeah, thanks for watching. I still don't really have an outro, so I guess I'll see you whenever. Also, go watch La La Land. Me being like every other YouTuber and casually listening to this song right before filming. You know, candid, real things I do.
Got the invitation.